Hello and welcome to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast with me, Andrew, and my co-host John. Once again, this episode is proudly sponsored by BitTitan. Check out their website today to find out BitTitan can help you migrate your data to the Microsoft cloud. So John, it feels like it's been forever since we recorded our last episode. Do you want to introduce our latest guest, please?
Yeah, sure. Nice to see everyone again after our small summer break. But today we have Sharon Weaver with us from Smarter Consulting. So Sharon, could you just give us a introduction about yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Like you said, my name is Sharon Weaver. I do own an IT consulting company called Smarter. We are a Microsoft partner. My background is primarily in analysis and strategy, content management, stuff like that. I have a Six Sigma Black Belt. I'm an MCT. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director. So I've been doing this for about 25 years now, hanging in the tech world, and spend all day, every day answering questions and helping people modernize and migrate and get to the cloud.
I mean,
A Six Sigma Black Belt. What is that?
So Six Sigma is based on the principles of Lean. Long story short, it's identifying gaps and improvement areas and being able to prove quantitatively how to solve them and what the ROI is going to look like.
Okay, cool. So that's something new to both me and John. I mean, one of the things, obviously, you already mentioned that you're an MCT. I mean, both me and John are, and we've already had MCTs on our previous episodes, but you're the only Microsoft Regional Director that's been on our episode. So do you want to just explain what that is?
Yeah, so the Microsoft Regional Director Program is a program kind of similar in nature to the MVP program. It's an award program, so you have to be nominated. You go through, the same kind of hoops that you would go through to like the MVP program, but RDs are typically they're more broad. So if you think about an MVP kind of being heavy in a specific technical area, an RD is more like an enterprise architect. So I kind of touch everything across the technology stack. In addition, where MVPs are kind of liaisoning between the technical community and technical product groups inside of Microsoft, the RDs are at the layer where essentially I'm liaisoning between executives and directors in companies and executives and directors and the product team in Microsoft. So a lot of my job is when I work with my clients, taking their feedback and finding out, enterprise needs and enterprise discussions, bringing those back to the Microsoft group and making them more aware of some of these struggles that we face at a really high level. So things that can include things like licensing or enterprise architecture issues, integration issues, things like that.
Awesome. So yeah, that's obviously interesting. I've seen the Microsoft Regional Director thing banded around quite a few times over LinkedIn, and people that I've basically got connected with having that title, but I've never actually understood what it was and how you actually achieve that. So let's go back to the very beginning of your life, and it's going to say it's quite interesting from what reading. So I know that obviously you're the oldest of 7 children to start off with.
I am, yeah. So my parents were my dad grew up in a very small family. My mom was one of 5. My dad was one of 2. He had an older sister, and he always wanted a bunch of kids. We kind of joke because he said he wanted a whole bunch of boys. He wanted everybody to have people to play with. So yeah, I'm the oldest of 7. And I grew up in a very large family, and my dad actually went to seminary. So he was a pastor. And when I was about 9, he went into the military and became a chaplain. So I grew up in the military. We traveled a lot, moved around a lot. And then I met my husband when I was in high school, and we got married, and my parents kind of moved on and I stuck around.
Oh, wicked. So from obviously bouncing around, obviously you said you've been like 10 different schools. I mean, how did you get into the world of IT? Because obviously you couldn't exactly stick at one school and just learn a particular subject. Obviously you had to move and do different curriculum. So how did you actually get into the world of IT?
So originally, the very first time that I saw a computer was when I was in 4th grade. Essentially, they brought in 2 Apple IIes and said, whenever you finish your work, you can go play on the computer. And I was pretty decent at finishing my work quickly, and that only motivated me to get it done faster. And so they brought him in, and I started playing around with him, and I thought it was kind of cool. And as I progressed, so I was in gifted starting in 5th grade, and in gifted, the gifted kids got to program basic. So that was one of the modules that we got in the gifted program, was how to program basic. So in 5th and 6th grade, I was programming basic as part of just, a fun program to keep us occupied, I think, more than anything. And I really enjoyed it. And so by the time I was in 7th grade, my mom had bought a Commodore 64 for the house, because she was a nerd too. She's always been a technology nerd. She's always wanted the next latest and greatest thing. And so she got a Commodore for home. And I grabbed the book and I learned how to kind of use it. But inside the book, you could build sprites. And so I learned how to basically copy the code that was in the book to make the things that I wanted to make. And I mean, the rest is kind of history, but I definitely early just really liked doing it. I know we talked about this earlier, but the funny thing is I didn't, like, career-wise, IT was never even something that was on my radar. I always thought computers were fun. It was a nice little hobby, right? And I actually wanted to be a doctor. I love helping people. I love tending to people. I had 6 younger siblings. I was used to, pulling splinters out and fixing boo-boos and all that kind of thing. And I just thought it'd be neat to be a doctor and to help people. And so I actually, throughout high school, I continued to just kind of play on my computer for fun, but I really focused on school. And I went to school with the idea of being pre-med. So I started pre-med. Got my associate's degree, took a lot of computer classes for electives just because I thought it'd be fun. And then I have a degree in developmental psychology. But I was actually working in a pharmacy, because in the med program, what they want you to do is have experience in the medical field. So they recommend that while you're in college, you go get a part-time job somewhere in the medical field. And so I went and I got a job in a pharmacy, working in a retail pharmacy. Just to get my medical experience. What was really funny is we had dental interns and we had doctor interns. We had all kinds of people who were going to different medical programs that all worked in the pharmacy. And so while I was there, that was at the very beginning. So they still had typewriters when I started. And they had just put in the first computers when I started in the pharmacy, and nobody knew how to use them. Nobody knew how to do the printers. Nobody knew how to connect to things. And so I was in there, helping them merge patient files and do things like that. And I really thought that this track was going to get me to medical school. And I very quickly realized that being a pharmacy tech does not pay enough to pay for medical school. That was a real challenge. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for all this. And so towards the end of working in the pharmacy, when I got done with my associate's degree, I went back to the local college and took some classes in media. At the time, they were doing kiosk design. Because I thought I wanted some extra money. I wanted a job that would be contract and part-time and allow me to go to medical school but still pay all my bills. So I went into media, learned how to do kiosk design. And about the same time that I started doing kiosk design, they said, we've got this brand new thing called a website, and we want you to learn how to do it. And so I kind of picked it up and did that for some extra money, paid a lot more than working in the pharmacy. And kept doing that and kept taking on more contracts and kept working my way up and kept getting more jobs. And basically, I got to a point where I wasn't doing so bad for myself. And I was like, well, if I keep doing this, I'm going to make, pretty decent money. And so I didn't go to medical school. I just kind of kept pushing forward in technology. And there you have it.
Yeah, so you become a SharePoint manager, which is kind of a banned word because I hate SharePoint. I've mentioned that quite a few times in previous episodes. It's one topic area that I don't like. Isn't that right, John?
Do you know what's quite funny? Listening to the story is, your background is. I think only one of our guests previously has had like a hobby growing up in IT, and it was in coding. And that same person actually went into the medical field as well, before going into their IT career later on. So that it's a similar story to a previous guest we had.
Yeah, was it Kathy Kellenberger?
Yeah, it's Kathy. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So yeah, obviously you talked about becoming getting into IT at the very start. I know obviously in the notes that you basically provide us before the episode obviously helps us, build these conversations that, when you basically started getting to IT, there wasn't really like a Microsoft community within the city that you were based in Kansas?
No, that's actually a good point. So not only is there not a Microsoft community, Kansas City is the home of a lot of tech startups. Believe it or not, people don't realize that. They call us the Silicon Prairie because we're actually very close in number to some of the other areas that have startups. Have a really high startup rate, heavy telecom, engineering, farming, things like that. And so what ends up happening is Microsoft was not really heavy in our area because there's so much open source and people wanting to do things, kind of a mixture of small places, because before Office 365 came, of course, it was really expensive to get enterprise software, and it was difficult to get enterprise software. In addition to a lot of the licensing needs that they had were different. And so we do have a Microsoft office here, but it's always been on the smaller side. And there's not a ton of Microsoft support, or hasn't been. It's getting better, but there really hasn't been in the past. And so working through that whole area of Microsoft was a really eye-opening for me when I got into a position where I worked for a company that had an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, and we started having more of those discussions, and I got more involved in the Microsoft community. I will say that the bulk of my community contacts are outside of the Kansas City area. There's a few that are in Kansas City, but the bulk of them are outside of the Kansas City area, just because that just was not a big thing. Now, I will tell you, since we've gone to the cloud and the licensing has become more, it's become a lot easier to get, right? So we can get an enterprise license per person. We don't have to pay for, an entire server farm to be able to use something like SharePoint anymore. It's become a lot more attainable. I feel like the Microsoft community has grown quite a bit here, because people are able to get that now. And so you're starting to see, I get people all day, every day, small, medium-sized businesses that call me that say, we have switched to Microsoft, or we want to switch to Microsoft now that it's more attainable for us.
I mean, obviously, because you've ran community events within Kansas, and built your own Office 365 group there, and obviously this podcast is all about women in tech. What kind of demographic of attendees was it mainly men that were basically attending your user group, or did you have quite well, I wouldn't say a large number of women attending, but a decent amount?
I would definitely say that it's always been a higher percentage of men in everything that I participate in. So, I mean, this kind of stands to reason. There's me and two dudes on this call, right? Many projects that I do, it's me, and I joke, it's me and 20 dudes, me and 30 dudes, right? But for my event, so I do run the Kansas City, the Office 365 user group. I've done that for several years now. And we do get a handful of women on there, but I would definitely say I would say generally it's over 50% male in general. I ran SharePoint Saturday Kansas City for last year would have been 7 years, and it was predominantly male most of the time. I started to see more and more women over the last few years. Before that, the numbers started to go up. What's really funny is the very first time I went to SharePoint conference, I tell people this is my my joke, or my story, my analogy to help you understand the women in technology crisis. The very first time I went to SharePoint conference, they closed the women's bathroom on the first floor, and they had a sign up that said men. And they said women need to go upstairs because there was too many men for the number of men's bathrooms they had, and there was not enough women to suit it. So they actually closed the women's bathrooms in multiple locations and narrowed us down to one bathroom because there were not enough women to fill the bathrooms. And the last time I went to a very large conference like that, we definitely had our own bathroom. Fine, they opened up the bathroom, but I will tell you, the men's line for the bathroom wrapped around the wall, but there was never a line for a women's restroom, which is really different compared to normal life, right? Normally, if you go to a restaurant, the women's restroom is the one with the line as opposed to the men. But at any technical conference that I've gone to, typically the men's line is out the wall where women typically don't have to wait. So I think that's a really good kind of description if you ask about how many men versus women, I know it's kind of silly to say go check the bathroom, but if you look at the line, it's very telling of how heavy the disparity is between how many men are there versus how many women are there.
I mean, apart from obviously not having a community in Kansas, I mean, what made you get involved in doing obviously community stuff and actually put yourself out there? Because obviously I know obviously a lot of women, you know, go to conferences, and obviously it is, you know, as you say, predominantly men, but basically putting yourself in a position where, you know, you can be judged and criticised and all kinds of, what made you want to do that?
I mean, if I'm being 100% honest, I was kind of lonely. I know that I did have some men around me to kind of work with, but I felt very alone in kind of what I did, especially when you think about admins and you think about product managers and program managers, and you know, so especially for something like SharePoint, where you're probably the only person or one of few people that are working in that particular area. Even in a large company, a lot of times you're the only one. I just felt like I was alone and I was trying to do my job, and I just didn't feel like I had anybody to really collaborate with. And so I started reaching out to the community originally just to kind of connect with other people and find, are there other people who have the same, you know, similar interests and similar skill sets that I have? Because at work, you know, people wanted to use the tools, but a lot of them didn't care to talk about them or to really look at the new stuff that was coming out. And so I looked for a community of people who kind of felt the same way I did. As I got deeper into the Microsoft community, it was really funny because I just remember the first few events that I went to, I came home and I felt like I had found my people, because they all kind of thought the way I did and liked the same things I did and were focused on a lot of the same skill sets and a lot of the same things. And I could have an intelligent conversation about something that they really enjoyed talking about, you know? And so when I came back, the person who had been leading some of the stuff for Kansas City, we had a couple of different people kind of walk away for different reasons. One person moved, another person was having children, you know, nothing bad, just they had other things in their life that were priority. And they asked if I'd like to step up and start kind of building the community in Kansas City and again. And so I was like, I had really enjoyed experiencing the community in other locations, and I wanted us to have that here. And so I said, okay, why not? And I got a place and I put it out on, you know, Meetup and Eventbrite, and, you know, just kind of started telling my friends, hey, let's get together and start doing this. And they started coming, you know, and I started finding people in our local community that were interested in those topics and wanted to learn more about it. And the timing was fantastic, because when you think about all the things that have changed over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been just massive change. And of course, you know, COVID not included, but there's been so much digital transformation and new things that have come out over the last 4 or 5 years, that having that community already built and put together really made going forward through all those changes a lot easier, because every time there's something new that comes out, you know, we get a different topic or a different presenter in the user group to go over that. And what was really neat is, so Kansas City is very large. So it's about an hour to an hour and a half from end to end if you go from any point to any point. So it's very difficult to host anything, because, you know, a lot of people can't leave their jobs for, you know, upwards of 2 hours or 3 hours just to go to a meeting. You can kind of divide us into 4 major quadrants, and we had talked about having 4 locations, but that's a lot of manpower and a lot of energy to do that. So early on, we had made the decision to add a virtual element to our user group long before COVID. And so we were meeting at a physical location, but we were actually streaming it to other people outside of the community, so that if you were 30 or 45 minutes away, but you wanted to attend, you could still pop on and watch. Or, you know, if you were maybe traveling for work, but you still wanted to participate, you could pop on and watch. And of course, by nature, that allowed us to record them and put them somewhere so that people could watch them later as well. And so we were already doing that before COVID hit, which really helped our community to grow, because we had people that were there in person, but we also were making it available to the community at large, and allowing people to sit at their desk and participate. And after COVID hit, that community stayed strong. And I was really excited because by creating that community and by already having that community going, when COVID hit, it was a struggle for a lot of people to switch over to a virtual platform, or to feel comfortable with that. And we just essentially said, we're not going to meet at our physical location, but our virtual events will continue to roll on. And we've had, we have an average of 20 to 30 people that come in to our virtual event every single month, and they continue to attend. So I think having that community locally has made a big difference for a lot of people through all of the changes over the last few years. And then, of course, my community globally is wonderful too, because I can reach out to lots of people and say, hey, how are things going? And have other people to collaborate with on a regular basis.
That's wicked. I mean, obviously, I've ran user groups in the past, and it is, it's a hard, task to take on, and basically getting that word out there that you're running an event. I mean, I ran a user group that basically spanned most of the UK, so I ran it from like 3 different locations. So for me to travel from where I'm currently based in the middle of them, from all them locations, it's a good like 2 hours upwards, 2 hours downwards, and it's a hard work. And obviously, one of the things for me is obviously not seeing enough women attending events as well. So that's something I've always had in my mind. And obviously, when I started this podcast, I want to get more women involved in doing technical roles and actually putting themselves out there. And hopefully, speaking to people like yourself, who can obviously been there, got the battle scars, can help share that message as well. I mean, I'm now going to touch on obviously stuff about the Women in Tech Network, because I know that one of our very early guests was basically a part of the UK side of that. So I know that you're part of the WIT network over in the US. So I'm going to explain to your engagement there.
So for the Women in Tech Network, I haven't presented or anything yet, but I do participate and I kind of go to events. So I'm part of the Women in Teams community, Women in Tech. There's several initiatives that are similar to that, where essentially they're really promoting that women attend. In fact, I'm on a board in Kansas City called the Digital Women of Kansas City as well. And the whole idea is not to be exclusive to women, but to really promote and encourage women to participate. Because like you said, a lot of the conferences and a lot of the user groups and a lot of the things, we see a lot of men, but women just don't tend to attend as often. And I think, part of it is they're busy with other parts of their lives. Part of it is we just have a lower percentage of women that are in technology to begin with. And I think, those types of programs are really trying to show women that not only can they do it, but other women are doing it. And so it's okay. And I think if you think about, who do you want to be like, or what do you want to do when you look at who am I and what are the things that I can do? If you see other women doing those things, you're more likely to feel empowered and encouraged that you can do them too. So I think all of those programs, the underlying effort is to get women to recognize that that they can do it. I know growing up, and it's funny because we talked about, the fact that I had a hobby as IT. I never once thought about myself going into IT as a career, because even growing up, I looked at every single person you see as a man, every single person that you see in the media, every single person that you see on books, every single person that you would see, doing things in the news or promoting things. It was all men. I never saw women in technology. And I think one of the reasons I like to participate in those things now is because I don't want people who are coming into technology to only see the faces of men. I want them to see the faces of women. I want them to know that there are women who have been doing this for their entire career, and that they can too, and that it's something that is open to anybody. I just don't think they do it as often.
I think Microsoft.
I think that's something that I.
Go on, John.
I was going to say. One of the things that I didn't realize was that the WIT network was an inclusive event for everyone. It wasn't just exclusive to women, and that's something I've never seen before. I never knew before. Sorry. But what was you going to say, Andrew, about Microsoft?
I say what about Microsoft is obviously they do very well. Obviously, if you look at Ignite, it's not all just men on stage. Obviously, Microsoft is led by Satya. Obviously, he's a male. But obviously, not just a male, but he's also from a diverse background as well. That's very key. But obviously, there's a lot of women as well when they're doing presenting. And obviously, one of our previous guests, Anne Michaels, she spoke at Ignite, many times over. So it's good to see, obviously, Microsoft.
Cariana as well. She hosted it. She hosted the last Ignite in March as well, which was great.
Exactly. It's good to see, obviously, women in tech being put in the proper spotlights and also having that diversity background as well.
Yeah. In fact, I think that they're doing such a good job at it. You're seeing a lot of response to that, right? So as these younger girls come up, and as they're starting to start their careers, I think you're seeing a lot more girls that are interested in technology, that actually believe that they could have a career in technology. What's interesting is I started seeing over a course, when I first started doing this, there was hardly any women. Over the course of about 5 years, I started seeing a lot more women coming in. And I think a lot of that was that you started seeing the citizen developer, and you started seeing business users who were power users, right? So the ability for women who were in other roles, who use technology heavily in their roles, created the opportunity for them to start participating in the conversation and the community in a way that they hadn't been before. And I think by exposing those types of people, and like you said, starting to put women on stage, Microsoft does a fantastic job of putting women on stage, spotlighting women in posts, and having them share their information out. And I think what's happening is the next generation of women that are coming up, when their girls are seeing that this is a possibility. And what's really exciting is I, for the first time in my career, am really starting to see a significant number of women starting to come in and say, yes, I'm in technology by choice. I choose to be in technology. And I think that's the defining moment when we start seeing women be in technology by choice, not by accident, is when we're going to start seeing that number really start going up.
I'd say from our previous guest, Sophie, she's a young woman, started in the world of IT, was previously a recruiter, and she's now actually going to be on a very first public speaking session alongside me and John when we do the South Coast Summit in October. And it's good to have such a diverse and wide, broad breadth of different people that are going to be on our panel that have been in IT for a long period of time. Because our session is literally about the women in teams community, which obviously you already spoke about. And as I say, that network is obviously open to everyone, because actually I'm actually in the women in teams community, because I'm here to obviously help promote as much as possible. So our session is literally going to focus on every single person that's on our panel, focus on their background, focus on why they got into IT, and obviously just push out that message. And I was looking at the speaker list earlier today, and it's great to see there's so many different women from even different countries are basically coming along and doing a session at this event. So I'm really looking forward to actually going down and delivering our session, and hopefully most of them speakers come and sit in our session if they're not speaking at the time, and just share that message a little bit more. So one thing obviously we spoke about before obviously coming on this actual episode is very much the difference between the promotion of women in like the UK and obviously here in the US, and there's obviously a few words about it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, so we share that message out?
Yeah, I have the privilege of really getting to connect with people around the world, which I don't think is it's getting better because we have more of globalized communication and collaboration now, but I definitely feel privileged to get to spend the time getting to communicate and collaborate with people around the world on a pretty regular basis. And one of the things I really have noticed is as I present, to different audiences, the US is still struggling with this issue heavily. I see it day in, day out. I think there are areas of the US that are really trying to make a difference. But it was really kind of interesting to me that I've given a couple of presentations and we've done a couple of women in tech panels. And I've been it's been curious because my attendees tend to be very heavily women, which is great because they feel kind of more included. But of the men that attend those things, I tend to notice a higher percentage of UK men overall of all places that they come in. I think UK is the highest, and so I don't want to statistically make an inference based on my presentations, but I can tell you based on my experience over multiple presentations with a very global, diverse audience, that from what I am seeing, the UK men tend to be really great allies, and tend to be more progressive than anywhere else that I've seen around the world. And I don't want to say anything bad about anybody else.
We are brilliant. That's what we are. Yes, we are brilliant. And so that's what me and John are trying our hardest to do. Everything we possibly can. But no, but yeah, I mean, obviously, as I said many times on this podcast, the whole journey of this podcast is to promote women because, say, my background being a conference host, user group host, seeing that lack of, sessions that are basically coming in from women, was a big problem for me because, I want to, try and change that a lot more. So, and I know that obviously you'll come to the UK in a week's time to speak at a friend's conference of mine, Mark Vale, the Commsverse event. I mean, that looks to be, a really good event. And again, looking at Mark's list of speakers, it's good to see again another mixed list of men and women, and not just men and women, but also diversity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm really excited. I was supposed to come over last year, but obviously COVID kind of stopped us, and we did it virtual instead. And I've been really excited to get to come this year, and we've delayed a little, but right, I got the tickets, so.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to Mark many times about his event, and I understand the work that he's put into it because, as I say, I ran a conference in the past, so I gave him a bit of advice of what to do, what not to do, and he's just basically took it to a whole new level, and what he's doing is just amazing, and my hat's off to him.
Yeah, no, everything that he's done has been fantastic. I've told him over and over and over that it's been probably one of the best experiences that I've had working with a conference. And I've done quite a few, but it's been very, very nice. So I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Right, John,
nice. I should see you there. I'm gonna be there for both days.
Yeah, you have to find me.
I will do.
So I would be there, but literally, I know obviously we've got podcast recordings on both them evenings, haven't we, John?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be at home for them ones, so we can crack on with our future episodes. But
well, I only live, I think, an hour and a half away, so I'll probably just go there and back. To be fair, it's not that far.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, our actual recordings for the next episodes are actually at 10 o'clock in the evening in the UK. I'm actually interviewing someone you basically mentioned in your notes. I think April.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we got April, and we've got who else have we got? We got Holly, who's just changed roles in Microsoft Corp, and there's Donna Sakura as well.
Yep, Donna's awesome. All great. You just have such a great list. That's awesome.
Well, trying. I mean, obviously, I just spoke to you before this call, but I'm going to try and get the MVP lead from the UK and the US on one call. Hopefully that's in the next couple of weeks because I know the US lead's actually in the UK at the moment, so time zone's not an issue. So we're going to try and get both of them on a call. It's going to be interesting because I've never actually had to rearrange my YouTube video with 4 people on it, so that's going to cause some problems. But it's great to see that obviously there is so many women that basically are putting themselves out there, and obviously I know that you also do a lot of mentoring as well for women in tech.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that for years. I think early on I didn't understand how big of a deal it was. When we talk about, looking up to people and who do you want to be? And I was a big fan of always having a mentor, but my mentors were always male. There were really hardly any females to look up to, especially that I worked with directly. And so the bulk of my mentors were male. But I think as I got older, I realized how nice would it be to have a female mentor who had been down that road and who understood those things and who had experienced some of those challenges. And so I early on kind of had people come to me and say, hey, this stuff, you've been down this road. Would you be willing to help me? And I had a lot of people who did that for me. So I was like, absolutely, of course. And And since then, I almost always have a couple of people, minimum, that I talk to on a regular basis and just kind of help them to navigate, what's next for them, and how to deal with some of the issues and how to deal with some of the challenges, male and female. I mentor both, young and older, right? Every kind of demographic you can talk about, I've had some level of person working with me. But I think the biggest thing that I spend a lot of time doing, and we talked about, having women be in all of these things. And I think one of the things that women really lack, especially in our culture here in the US, is self-confidence. They feel like, our commercialization of women is awful. I'm just going to say it out loud, on podcast, but it's just awful. We have this expectation that women should look a certain way and act a certain way and appear a certain way. And I have so many friends that refuse to go outside of the house without makeup, or go outside of the house if they don't look perfect, or if they gain 3 pounds, they refuse to do any more photo shoots, right? That type of thing. And we have to get out of that. Men don't think that way. Men are like, did I take a shower today? And I'm not trying to say that to be mean, but they don't worry about every little thing, I think, the way that women do sometimes. They get up and are they clean and are they groomed, and that's enough, right? You don't have to worry about some of this stuff. And we had a really heavy conversation about this in one of the WIT panels that we did. And it got pretty deep in the idea that one of the things that women experience that really hits our self-confidence is if we post a picture or a post or a video out there, there's a lot of people who feel like they have the right to give us feedback. And most of the time it's not so nice and it's not so helpful. And so that makes it really, really difficult for women to have the self-confidence to post things because they put it out there. And a lot of times, I can put a very technical thing out there. And I've done this where I've put very technical things out there and I've gotten very sexist remarks around, the color of my hair, or how I look that day or whatever. And I think that's just something that we have to mentor women to get past. We have to say, you need to have the self-confidence to do this, and you need to be okay with whoever you are and however you are, and embrace who you are, at the root, so that you're sharing whatever it is that's important for you to get out to the world. And I think women, like I said, especially here, but I see it all over the place. They're so caught up in what will people think and how will people respond that they missed the part of being able to really share their experience or their journey or their information or whatever. And so we're missing out on that information getting out to other people. So I think a lot of my mentoring really stems around encouraging people, both men and women, to have self-confidence and to be themselves and to step out of their comfort zone and do things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. And it's really funny because when I have my coaching sessions, there's so many times and I'm like, pot kettle, I get it. I'm scared too. I've got things that I should be doing that I'm not doing. And here I am coaching you on getting out of your comfort zone. And I need to get out of my comfort zone more too. But I think, whenever you do another thing and whenever you say I'm nervous or I'm scared or I'm anxious, but I'm going to do it anyways, you stand up for all those people who may not feel the self-confidence to do it themselves.
Yeah, definitely. So I know we're coming close to time. You got a question, John?
I was just going to remark on something that Sharon said about the sexist comments and stuff. It's something we've heard many times. It's disgusting, really. Especially, I think Layla said it last time. She does a lot of streaming, and people just think that's acceptable, which is obviously not. But yeah, I was just going to before we kind of get to the wrap up stage, just kind of. How do you do all of this around your day-to-day job? what's like your day-to-day like schedule to kind of fit in the community stuff, fit in the mentor, and fit in your day-to-day job?
So first of all, I am a big fan of time management. I actually speak on time management as well. I'm a big fan of understanding what your priorities are, and I put everything on my calendar, and I basically say, how much time do I have available this week for community stuff, and I will, earmark, 4 hours or whatever it is that I feel is an appropriate amount of time that I'm putting into community stuff, and I will fit that into my calendar. I try to prioritize. I mean, everybody has their priorities, right, of what's important to them and when they spend time. I will tell you, I do have kids, but basically they're all grown now. And so when my kids were smaller, I did not have as much time to give to the community things, and I gave more of it to work and more of it to my family. And now that my kids are older and have their own lives, I have more time to myself. And so I essentially put it on my calendar. I prioritize things. And if something comes up or I need to reschedule, and this is something I tell women too, is don't feel bad about rescheduling. Like if something comes up, most people are very accommodating and are completely understand. It's totally fine. There's not one time that I've rescheduled something that somebody's been like, I'm no longer going to talk or work with you because you rescheduled. Like that, it just doesn't happen. And so I think it's a matter of setting priorities, putting things on your schedule, honoring your schedule. And then if something does come up that is more important, it's just simply reaching out and rescheduling things and making them work. And I do my best to manage that. I do my best to not work a bazillion hours a week. I definitely probably work more than the average person, but I also like what I do. And a lot of the community work is my hobby now. I enjoy researching. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy, learning the new stuff. So a lot of that is my hobby time, where somebody else might go play soccer or go to the park or have a different hobby that just happens to be the hobby that I've chosen. So I think some of it goes into my hobby time, and some of it's just a matter of prioritizing it in my day-to-day calendar.
Wicked. So yeah. So we're getting close to time now. Obviously, I don't want to take up any more of your time as possible. So what I normally try and do at the end of every episode is I try and ask an interview question. So my question to you is basically, what's next?
What's next for me?
Yes.
So I always try to look for the next 3 to 5 years. Every 3 to 5 years, I kind of try to reinvent myself a little bit because I feel like, you're either moving forward or moving backwards. And so one of the things that I really enjoy is travel. I love to travel. I've traveled my whole life, and I love helping people with travel. And so while I'm going to stay in the tech world, I still continue to own my business. I will still continue to participate in the community. One of the things that I've added on during some of my hobby time is learning about the travel industry, and I've become a licensed travel agent. And so I'm learning.
That sounds very different to be working in IT.
It is. It's one of those things where I'm looking to my future, and I love what I do in technology, but at some point, I want to add some variety to it. And I've spent 25, 30 years with my head in technology, and I kind of want to get my head out of technology for at least a few minutes a day. And so, yeah, I've been learning a lot about travel. I've joined a travel host, got my travel agent license. I'm doing the training process right now just to learn more about all the different opportunities. And I'm going to kind of pick that up as a little bit of a hobby to really learn more about travel and kind of broaden my horizons a bit. So, and I feel like it marries up nicely with the fact that I'm in tech and I do travel quite a bit. So I think what's next for me is growing my business, growing my community, doing all of the same things I've been doing for the last little bit. But I'm also adding on some extra travel pieces to that I think are going to be fun and have yet to kind of show what level I'm going to do what with. But I think it's going to be exciting.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to say thank you very much for obviously, spending time with us today and obviously sharing your thoughts and messages around the women in tech. We want to obviously continue to keep doing this until obviously there is no more women in tech we can actually speak to. So, me and John will be here until we probably spoke to every single woman in the tech community world.
We're hosted up to, we've got guests up until March or April now. So hopefully we've got a good lineup for everyone in the future. And
John, I might actually have to extend that a little bit more. I've been reaching out to a few more women in tech today to actually come on board. So I think it might be about March in 2023 or something. But yeah,
great,
cool. So yeah, thank you so much, Sharon, for joining us today. And John, I will see you next time. So thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight Podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about BitTitan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let MigrationWiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose MigrationWiz.